MOONLIGHT'S EMBRACE. Published by Chereds. Chapter 1. The desolation of Nanjing Mountain. Nanjing Mountain was a place of stark contrasts. The rolling hills, though picturesque from a distance, were barren and unyielding. The soil, dry and cracked, seemed to repel life rather than nurture it. Farmers toiled from dawn till dusk, their hands calloused and their spirits broken, but the land gave little in return. Crops withered before they could bloom, and the few that survived were meager and insufficient. The people of Nanjing Mountain lived in a constant state of desperation, their faces gaunt and their eyes hollow with hunger. The village itself was a patchwork of crumbling huts and makeshift shelters. The air was thick with the scent of despair, and the streets were lined with the weary and the destitute. Children with sunken cheeks played listlessly in the dirt, their laughter replaced by the silence of survival. The once vibrant marketplace was now a ghostly shadow of its former self, with only a handful of vendors selling scraps of food at exorbitant prices. The people whispered prayers to the heavens, begging for rain, for food, for mercy, but their pleas seemed to fall on deaf ears. At the heart of this suffering was the chief, a man whose cruelty knew no bounds. He lived in a grand house atop the highest hill, its opulence a stark contrast to the poverty below. His table was always laden with food, while his people starved. He taxed them heavily, taking what little they had to fill his own coffers. His guards patrolled the village, ensuring no one dared to rise against him. The people feared him, but more than that, they hated him. Yet, in their weakened state, they were powerless to change their fate. The descent of Wen Shia. High above the mortal realm, in the celestial palaces of the gods, Wen Shia watched the suffering of Nanjing Mountain with a heavy heart. He was a god of compassion, known for his gentle nature and unwavering dedication to helping those in need. The cries of the people reached him like a mournful song, and he could no longer bear to remain idle. One fateful night, as the moon hung low in the sky, Wen Shia descended to the earth. His arrival was marked by a soft, golden light that illuminated the village, casting away the shadows of despair. The people, though weak and weary, felt a strange warmth in their hearts, as if a long-forgotten hope had been rekindled. Wen Shia moved through the village like a whisper, his presence both calming and powerful. He blessed the fields, and for the first time in years, the soil began to yield crops. He prayed for rain, and the heavens answered, sending down a gentle shower that nourished the land. He shared food with the hungry, healed the sick, and offered words of comfort to the brokenhearted. The people began to call him the Golden God, a beacon of hope in their darkest hour. The meeting with Xiang. One evening, as Wen Shia wandered through the village, he came across a little girl sitting alone by the side of the road. She was no more than 6 or 7 years old, her small frame dwarfed by the tattered rags she wore. Her face was smudged with dirt, and her hair was a tangled mess, but her eyes, wide and luminous, held a quiet strength that belied her age. The girl, Xiang, was begging for food, her voice barely audible above the murmurs of the passing crowd. People hurried past her, their faces averted, as if her poverty was a curse they feared to catch. But Wen Shia saw her not as a beggar, but as a child in need of love and care. He knelt before her, his golden robes pooling around him, and extended his hand. In his palm was a small loaf of bread, still warm from the oven, and a handful of sweet candies wrapped in colorful paper. Xiang stared at the offering, her eyes wide with disbelief. She hesitated for a moment, as if afraid it might vanish, before reaching out to take it. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with gratitude. "Thank you for giving me food." Wen Shia smiled, his eyes filled with kindness. "You are welcome, little one. Eat and be strong." As Xiang devoured the bread, savoring every bite, Wen Shia watched her with a mixture of sadness and admiration. Despite her circumstances, there was a spark of resilience in her that touched his heart. Before he left, Xiang called out to him, her voice soft but determined. "I will repay you for this kindness," she said, her words carrying the weight of a promise. Wen Shia paused and turned to look at her. A small, poor child like her had made such a vow. He smiled warmly but said nothing, knowing that her gratitude was enough. The transformation of Nanjing Mountain. Over the following months, the village underwent a remarkable transformation. The fields, once barren, now overflowed with crops. The rains came regularly, and the rivers flowed with clear, fresh water. The people, inspired by Wen Shia's kindness, began to help one another, sharing what they had and working together to rebuild their lives. The cruel chief, seeing his power wane, tried to cling to his throne, but the people, emboldened by their newfound hope, rose against him. He was overthrown, and a council of elders was established to lead the village with fairness and compassion. Xiang, though still living on the streets, felt the change in the air. She continued to survive by doing odd jobs, cleaning dishes at the tea shop, carrying water for the elderly, and helping in the fields. She never forgot Wen Shia's kindness, and his words echoed in her mind, giving her strength during the hardest times. The meeting with Li Yunzi. One day, as Xiang was scrubbing dishes at the tea shop, a man entered and took a seat by the window. He was dressed in simple but well-made clothes, his demeanor calm and thoughtful. His eyes, sharp and observant, fell on Xiang, and he was struck by the quiet determination with which she worked. When she brought him his tea, he smiled at her and asked, "Little one, what is your name?" Xiang looked up at him, her face streaked with dirt but her eyes shining with a quiet beauty. "My name is Xiang," she replied softly. The man nodded, his expression kind. "I am Li Yunzi. Tell me, Xiang, do you have a family?" Xiang's face fell, and she shook her head. "I have no family. I am an orphan." Li Yunzi's heart ached for her. He had lost his own daughter to illness years ago, and seeing Xiang stirred something deep within him. "Where do you live, then?" he asked gently. "I live here, on the streets," Xiang admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Li Yunzi was silent for a moment, his mind racing. Then, with a resolve born of compassion, he said, "Xiang, I want to adopt you. Would you like to become part of my family? Would you be my daughter?" Zhang's breath caught in her throat. She stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief and hope. For so long, she had dreamed of having a family, a place to belong. And now, this kind stranger was offering her just that. "Yes," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I would like that very much." Li Yunzi smiled, his own eyes glistening with emotion. He reached out and gently took her hand. "Then it is settled. From this day forward, you are my daughter, and I am your father. We will face the world together." A new beginning. As Xiang walked away from the tea shop with Li Yunzi, she felt a sense of peace she had never known before. The streets that had once been her prison now seemed like a distant memory. She knew that her life was about to change in ways she could hardly imagine, but she also knew that she would never forget the kindness of those who had helped her along the way, especially the God who had once given her food and hope. Years later, as a young woman, Xiang would often visit the village square, where a statue of Wen Shia stood as a reminder of the golden god's compassion. She would place a single flower at its base, a silent thank you to the one who had shown her that even in the darkest of times. By Chereds. A new beginning. Xiang agreed and nodded softly, her eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and hope. "Okay, but why do you want to adopt me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Li Yunzi smiled warmly, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Because I don't have a daughter," he explained gently. "My wife has always longed for one. She feels lonely at times, and I believe you would bring joy to our lives. You are kind-hearted, resilient, and full of potential. That's why I want to adopt you." Zhang's cheeks flushed at his words. It was the first time anyone had spoken so highly of her. She hesitated, looking down at her tattered clothes and dirty hands. "But I'm not like the people you know. I'm dirty, and everyone always runs away from me," she murmured, her voice tinged with shame. Li Yunzi shook his head firmly, his expression kind but resolute. "Not to us," he said. "You are worthy of love and care, just like anyone else. Come with me." He extended his hand, and after a moment of hesitation, Xiang took it. His grip was warm and reassuring as he led her to his home. When they arrived, Zhang's eyes widened in awe. The house was enormous, with towering gates and a beautifully manicured garden. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. As they entered, Li Yunzi called out to his wife, "Look, my dear. I've brought you a gift." His wife, Li Huan, emerged from the house. Her eyes lit up the moment she saw Xiang. Without a word, she rushed forward and enveloped the girl in a warm embrace. "Welcome home, my child," she said, her voice filled with emotion. From that day on, Xiang became a part of their family. They gave her the name Li Xiang, symbolizing her new life and identity. Li Huan doted on her, showering her with love and care as though she had always been their daughter. For the first time in her life, Xiang felt a sense of belonging. However, adjusting to her new life wasn't easy. The grandeur of the palace felt overwhelming, and the whispers of the servants and nobles often made her feel out of place. Some would mock her past, calling her a street rat behind her back. Though Li Huan and Li Yunzi treated her with nothing but kindness, the hurtful words of others lingered in her mind. One day, Li Huan noticed Xiang sitting alone in the garden, her shoulders slumped and her eyes downcast. She approached her gently and asked, "What troubles you, my dear?" Xiang hesitated before replying, "I don't belong here. Everyone thinks I'm different." Li Huan's heart ached for her. She knelt beside Xiang and took her hands in hers. "You are not different, Xiang. You are our daughter, and you deserve to be here. But I understand how hard this must be for you. Perhaps what you need is guidance. A teacher who can help you grow and find your place in this world." With that, Li Huan began her search for a suitable mentor for Xiang. She wanted someone who could not only teach her skills but also nurture her spirit. Meanwhile, far away in the celestial realm, Wen Shia stood in a serene garden, lost in thought. The air around him was filled with the fragrance of blooming flowers, but his mind was elsewhere. Suddenly, a messenger approached him and bowed deeply. "The heavenly god has summoned you," he announced. Without hesitation, Wen Shia made his way to the heavenly god's palace. He bowed respectfully and asked, Why have you called me, heavenly god? The heavenly god, seated on a throne of shimmering light, regarded him with a solemn expression. I have an important mission for you, he said. You must go to Earth and find the element stone. It is a powerful, multicolored stone that holds immense energy. Its existence must remain a secret, for it could bring great destruction if it falls into the wrong hands. Wen Shia frowned slightly. Where on earth is this stone? He asked. The heavenly god's gaze was unwavering. That is for you to discover. The previous heavenly god hid it well to protect it. You must find it and ensure its safety. Do not return until your mission is complete. Wen Shia nodded. I understand. I will leave at once. The next day, Wen Shia descended to Earth and arrived at the Nanjing Mountains. His first task was to find a place to stay. As he wandered through the lush landscape, he encountered Li Yunzi, who greeted him with a warm smile. What brings you here, young man? Are you looking for something? Wen Shia eyed him cautiously. How do you know me? He asked. Li Yunzi chuckled. Who wouldn't recognize you? You're the god who once helped people when no one else would. Tell me, how can I assist you? Wen Shia relaxed slightly. I need a place to live, he said. Li Yunzi gestured toward a nearby house. There's a house right next to mine. You are welcome to stay there. Grateful, Wen Shia moved in and began his search for the element stone. One day, as Wen Shia practiced his skills atop a hill, Xiang spotted him from afar. He was dressed in pristine white robes that fluttered in the wind, and he held a beautiful fan in his hand. His movements were graceful and precise, as though he were painting the air with his skills. The fan flew from his hand, marking the air before returning to him effortlessly. Xiang couldn't take her eyes off him. To her, he seemed like a celestial being. She mustered her courage and ran up to him. Will you make me your student? She asked eagerly. I want to learn cultivation and swordsmanship. Her eyes sparkled as they lingered on the elegant sword at his side. Wen Shia looked at her and immediately refused. No, I'm not going to teach anyone. Please, Xiang pleaded. She dropped to her knees, clasping her hands together. Please take me as your student. But Wen Shia remained firm. No, he said, his voice final. Published by Chereds. A silent plea. Xiang knelt before the towering figure, her hands clasped tightly together, her voice trembling with determination. Please accept me as your student. I promise I will never let you down. I will devote myself wholeheartedly to learning cultivation. The man stood tall, his presence commanding and almost otherworldly. His sharp, piercing eyes bore into her, as though weighing her worth in a single glance. His voice, when he spoke, was cold and unyielding. No, he said flatly, leaving no room for argument. Heartbroken, Xiang rose to her feet, her head bowed low to hide the tears welling up in her eyes. She turned and walked away, her steps heavy with disappointment. When she returned home, her mother, Madame Li, noticed her distress immediately. What happened, my dear? She asked gently, placing a comforting hand on Zhang's shoulder. Xiang wiped her tears with the back of her hand and sniffled. Today, I met someone extraordinary. A man who could teach me everything I need to know. He has the power, the wisdom, everything I've been searching for. But he refused to teach me. Madame Li tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. And who is this man? I don't know his name, Xiang admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But he's the most majestic person I've ever seen. He's tall and handsome, almost like a god descended from the heavens. His face is striking, with sharp features that seem carved from stone. His eyes are like deep pools of midnight, so dark and intense that they seem to see right through you. His hair is jet black, tied back in a loose ponytail, with a few strands falling over his forehead. He wears pristine white robes made of the finest silk, embroidered with silver patterns that shimmer like starlight. He carries a fan with a unique design, delicate yet powerful, and a sword with a blue gemstone embedded in its hilt. The sword looks ancient, as though it holds secrets of the past. Madame Li chuckled softly, her eyes twinkling with amusement. You've certainly observed him closely for someone you've only met once. Xiang blushed furiously but didn't deny it. Madame Li smiled knowingly. I believe I know who you're talking about. He lives near our house and knows your father well. Zhang's eyes lit up with hope. You do? Where does he live? Madame Li gave her the address, and without wasting a moment, Xiang ran out of the house, her heart pounding with excitement. She followed the directions until she arrived at a modest yet elegant home nestled among the trees. The door was slightly ajar, and finding no one inside, she stepped in hesitantly. The house was simple but in need of tidying up. Dust covered the shelves, and the floors were strewn with leaves that had blown in through the open windows. Xiang rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She swept the floors, dusted the shelves, and even polished his belongings until they sparkled. Once everything was clean, she thought of preparing a meal for him. However, she realized she didn't know what he liked and only knew how to make a simple noodle soup. Undeterred, she set to work. Just as she finished, the door opened, and the man, Wen Shia, stepped inside. He stopped in his tracks, his sharp eyes scanning the room in surprise. His home, which had been in disarray, was now spotless. His gaze finally landed on Xiang, who was nervously hiding behind a doorframe. What are you doing here? He asked, his voice sharp and authoritative. Xiang stepped out, smiling shyly. I just wanted to serve you, master. I cleaned your house and made you some food. I hope you'll accept me as your disciple. Wen Shia's expression hardened, and he crossed his arms over his chest. I am not your master, nor will I ever be. Leave my house at once. But Xiang didn't back down. Please, master, I promise to do anything you ask. Just give me a chance. How did you even find my house? He asked, clearly annoyed. Xiang grinned, her confidence returning. My mother told me. She said you know my father. Your father? Wen Shia frowned, his sharp eyes narrowing. Who is your father? Li Yunzi, she replied confidently. His eyes widened slightly, but his expression remained stoic. So, you are his daughter. That does not change my decision. Leave. Xiang didn't argue further. Instead, she quietly placed the bowl of noodle soup on his table and left without another word. Wen Shia was a man of few words, his demeanor as cold and unyielding as the winter wind. His presence was commanding, and his sharp, piercing eyes seemed to see through the very soul of anyone who dared to meet his gaze. He was tall and lean, his movements graceful yet deliberate, as though every step he took was calculated. His face was striking, with sharp cheekbones and a strong jawline that gave him an air of authority. His eyes, dark and intense, were like deep pools of midnight, often unreadable but always observing. He wore pristine white robes made of the finest silk, embroidered with intricate silver patterns that shimmered like starlight. His hair, jet black and silken, was tied back in a loose ponytail, with a few strands falling over his forehead, giving him an almost untamed look. At his waist hung an ancient sword, its hilt adorned with a blue gemstone that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. The sword was a relic of his past, a symbol of his strength and the burdens he carried. Wen Shia was a man of discipline and solitude. He rarely spoke unless necessary, and his words were always measured and precise. He had a deep sense of duty, often putting the needs of others above his own, though he would never admit it. His cold exterior was a shield, protecting him from the vulnerabilities of the world. Yet, beneath that icy facade, there was a flicker of something softer, a hint of compassion that he kept hidden from the world. Additional scene. One evening, as Xiang was polishing the ancient sword she had often seen hanging on the wall, Wen Shia entered the room unexpectedly. His sharp eyes fell on her, and for a moment, he said nothing. Xiang froze, her heart racing, unsure if she had overstepped. Do you know what that sword represents? He asked, his voice calm but carrying an edge of curiosity. Xiang shook her head, her hands trembling slightly. No, master, but it feels powerful, like it holds a story. Wen Shia's gaze softened, just for a moment, before he turned away. It does, but stories are not for the faint of heart. Finish your work and leave. Xiang nodded, her determination renewed. She knew she was getting closer to breaking through his icy exterior. And she was willing to wait as long as it took.